Good morning, Darren. So this is the tone of Rishi Sunak's party political broadcast. It was very statesmanlike. He was sort of looked like he was locked in a bit of a basement with two Union Jack flags behind him. I wasn't sure who'd kidnapped him when I saw that. How's it been received down there in Westminster?
Yeah, addressing the nation, I think, Bev, it was branded as, but it is a party political broadcast. Now, all political parties get to have one. We're not like the United States where you're allowed to advertise on the television, if you like, with different political campaign ads. Rather, the state, BBC and ITV and others, give 5 minutes every so often to the different party political leaders to make their case. And as you say, Rishi Sunak's case was all about his 5 priorities he talks about, most notably on the National Health Service and on the small boats crisis in the English Channel, trying to get both of those figures down, if you like, in terms of waiting lists and also the numbers of people crossing the channel. I think the big question, of course, for the Prime Minister is, yes, it's all very well and good saying you want to get these things down, but what are the actual targets you're trying to achieve and by when? Frankly, because there is not an awful lot of transparency when it comes to all of this. So when you look at some of the detail this morning with the National Health Service in England, it's pretty grim reading, it must be said, all round for the government, with new figures now showing that more than half of people who turn up to A&E in England are having to wait more than 4 hours. So, you know, A&E, when you go to A&E, it's pretty serious. It's called accident and emergency, and yet more than half of people turning up, Bev, are not being seen within 4 hours. On top of that, the number of people being seen by ambulances, so just paramedics turning up at your door if you've had a Category A, so that's life-threatening emergency call, was 10 minutes and 57 seconds. But Category 2, this is extraordinary. These are people who've had heart attacks and strokes, and for the first time, their wait time was over an hour and a half. The target's 18 minutes.
Awful,
you had a heart attack or stroke, you call 999. The average waiting time is an hour and a half. It's extraordinary.
And you know, Darren, we've had an exclusive interview this morning with one lady who lost her husband when she waited 90 minutes and called the ambulance 6 times, and the paramedics said if they'd arrived earlier, he would have survived, and he died of a heart attack. Going back to this party political broadcast that Rishi Sunak gifted to us yesterday, he does have this unfortunately kind of man-child demeanour. And is there a sense that he's going to lose the next election for the Conservatives if they don't do something about him? Boris Johnson, of course, never very far away from the political scene, is kind of loitering in the wings. The press are starting to, some of the left-wing press are starting to stick the knife into him again. What's the feeling down there at Westminster? Should Rishi be worried? Because effectively they've got to get in a general election footing fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, that general election has to happen, well, within the next 2 years. I mean, the last possible time, I mean, taking it to the very end of this Parliament, will be January 2025. Now, the expectation is the election will happen next year, either in the spring. I might suggest it will probably be as late as the autumn of 2024. Yeah, Rishi Sunak in that video last night, you know, many people, a bit like when he first became Prime Minister, think he can be a little bit stilted, not terribly comfortable in that role. Actually, he's much better just dealing off the cuff and talking with people than he is in reading auto cues and staring down the barrel of a camera. In fact, actually, I'd say he's getting better at PMQs than he is at that presentational style. At the end of the day, of course, being Prime Minister isn't all about presentation. It's not how you all seem on TV or on social media. It's about the actual decisions you make. But within the Conservative Party, yes, of course, you know, Rishi Sunak essentially became Prime Minister, didn't he, without the formal backing of the political party. There was no actual vote. There was no vote amongst the membership, and there is disquiet. Of course, this is a party that is deeply divided. The opinion polls haven't swung back as much as many Conservative MPs would like. Rishi Sunak, though, personally is more popular than the Conservative Party. As for Boris Johnson, he was in London the other night unveiling a portrait to himself when he was Prime Minister. I think he would like us to think that he might potentially come back. For me personally, I think it's really, really unlikely to change Conservative leader again. I'm not entirely sure lots of the public would buy that, even if it was Boris Johnson. And I think the Conservative Party almost certainly, never guarantee anything in politics, but almost certainly whatever Rishi Sunak leading them into the next election.
Thank you, Darren. Well, we are in the best pair of hands there with our political editor, Darren McCaffrey.